picture this. You're standing in your living room, and you are just running on fumes at the end of a long day.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. We all do. So you look over and you ask your child to, please stop jumping on the couch.
And let me guess.
Yeah. They freeze. They look you dead in the eye. And then without even breaking eye contact, they launch into another jump.
The classic stare down.
Exactly. So you say it again, right? Louder. You deploy the serious voice, but nothing changes.
Nothing at all.
And now you're officially in a standoff. Your blood pressure is spiking, and you feel like you're just entirely losing your grip on the situation.
It is, it's the universal breaking point. We are completely conditioned to look at that exact moment and see a child who is deliberately trying to undermine our authority.
Yes, which just naturally makes you want to double down.
Yeah.
You want to assert control.
Because it feels personal.
But it's not. And that is the exact tension we're exploring in today's deep dive. We're looking at this really fascinating article from Psychology Today by Jen Limonlin. It's titled, Why Setting Limits with Your Child Feels So Hard.
It's a great piece.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack why managing behavior feels like this endless, exhausting, uphill battle. And her core premise offers a massive reframing of this entire dynamic.
A total paradigm shift, really.
Yeah. She points out that the problem usually isn't actually the child's behavior. Instead, there are these 3 hidden gaps in how we, as adults, approach limits. So, okay, let's unpack this, because the truth about defiance is pretty surprising.
It really is. What's fascinating here is that we tend to view defiance as just this random act of rebellion, like a child just deciding to be difficult for the fun of it.
Like they woke up and chose violence.
Right, exactly. But the research points to something entirely different. Defiance is rarely random. It is actually a highly specific signal. Yeah. When a child pushes back, they're communicating that something in their environment, or honestly in the adult's approach to them, fundamentally isn't working.
So they aren't just plotting a coup in the living room, they're actually giving us data.
Real-time feedback, exactly. And usually that signal means one of 2 things. Either there are just way too many limits being placed on their basic sense of control.
Like they're being micromanaged.
Yes. Or the defiance is a desperate bid for connection. I mean, they are reaching out in the only way that consistently guarantees your undivided attention.
Wow.
And if we zoom out to the broader landscape of child development, a child simply looking at an adult and saying no has actually hit a crucial developmental milestone.
Wait. I have to push back on that.
Go for it.
Because, in the heat of a Tuesday evening meltdown, a perfectly obedient, highly compliant robot child sounds incredibly appealing.
Oh, for sure. It's the dream in the moment.
It is. So wait, so a perfectly obedient, highly compliant robot child is actually a bad thing. Because it's really hard to view the word no as a milestone when you just need them to put on their shoes so you can leave the house.
I completely hear you. Total compliance is frankly incredibly convenient for the adult in the short term. But here's the counterintuitive part from the research. If we look at the longitudinal data, demanding that kind of frictionless obedience comes with a steep psychological cost.
Really? Like what?
Well, high compliance in young children, where they just obey every directive every single time without question, is actually strongly correlated with greater worry, anxiety, and fearfulness later in life.
Oh, wow. So they aren't actually thriving or navigating the world, they're just suppressing.
Exactly. They are outsourcing their internal compass. They aren't practicing self-advocacy. They're just learning that their own desires or discomforts don't matter compared to the demands of whoever happens to be the authority figure in the room.
Man, that's heavy. And it makes sense, right? Like, as adults, these are probably the people who struggle to set boundaries in the workplace.
Or in relationships, yeah. Because they were trained early on that their only role is to appease others.
Okay, so if more limits and total compliance aren't the answer and actually might be a red flag, we need to look at those 3 hidden gaps making limits so hard, starting with gap 1, which is about our own internal compass.
Right. Gap 1 is the confusion between values and goals. And to understand this, the author uses this brilliant hiking analogy.
Oh, right, the hiking one.
Yeah. So think of a goal as the summit of the hike. It's just the destination. Did you reach the top? Did the child stop jumping? Did they eat the broccoli? It's purely transactional.
Just the yes or no outcome.
Exactly. But values, on the other hand, guide how the journey feels. Are you the kind of hiker who stops to take photos? Do you hike in meditative silence? Do you pack trail mix or a gourmet lunch?
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because setting a limit based purely on a goal is where we run into so much trouble.
Oh, absolutely.
If the goal is just make them stop, and you don't actually know what your own values are, setting limits becomes pure guesswork based on fear.
Yes. Without a clear value, we jump straight to catastrophic hypotheticals.
Like, what if they become someone nobody wants to be around? Or if I don't force them to share this toy right now, they're going to grow up to be a selfish monster.
Exactly. We project panic about a completely fictional future rather than just dealing with the reality of the present moment. And kids, they are like emotional radar dishes.
Oh, they pick up on everything.
They really do. If an adult enforces a boundary born out of vague anxiety rather than a grounded value, the adult's tone betrays them. It sounds uncertain, or it escalates too quickly, or it sounds apologetic.
And a child will instantly test a wobbly boundary like that.
Every single time.
The author actually shares a real-life example of this dynamic, going back to the couch. So when her daughter, Carrie's, was 1 year old, she was jumping on this very old, beat-up 12-year-old couch.
And the parents didn't set a limit.
Right. Because it wasn't a problem. It's an old couch. Who cares? But fast forward a couple of years, she's 3, she's older, she's heavier, and she's jumping on the same couch.
And now the physical reality has changed. The couch springs are literally collapsing.
Yes. So right then, the parents instituted a firm limit against jumping. But the reason it worked, the reason it didn't turn into an hours-long battle, is the key here.
Because the new limit came from a genuine value.
Exactly. Respecting property, taking care of the things we own. They weren't spiraling into fear that she was a delinquent.
And the psychology of the adult completely shifts when you're rooted in a genuine value like that. Because you actually believe in it, you don't have to gear up for conflict or put on emotional armor.
You just hold the limit with a clear, firm tone.
Right, you project calm stability, and that clarity regulates the child's nervous system.
Okay, so if gap 1 is about the adult's internal compass, gap 2 is about understanding the child's internal drive. It's the difference between setting limits to control behavior versus meeting a need.
This is huge.
I want you, the listener, to imagine a scenario from your own adult life for a second. Imagine your boss walks up to your desk and hands you a massive new project without asking. Or a partner dictates your weekend plans with absolutely no room for discussion.
You bristle immediately.
Instantly. Even if you originally wanted to do the task, you suddenly want to do it a little bit less the very second your say is taken away.
That visceral resistance you feel is so real, and it's perfectly explained by a psychological framework called self-determination theory.
Which is, it's one of the most robust models of human motivation we have, right?
Yes. It identifies 3 core universal human needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Your boss handing you that project without asking, that's a direct violation of your autonomy.
Which is the need to have a meaningful say over what happens to your own body and your own time.
Exactly. And the infancy factor here is crucial. This need for autonomy doesn't magically appear in adolescence or when you turn 18. It starts in infancy and grows stronger every single year.
So like a toddler insisting on pouring their own milk, even when they spill it everywhere, that's a biological drive for autonomy.
Yes. And competence, too, the drive to master their environment. But think about a typical day for a young child. From the moment they wake up, limits are set constantly throughout the day.
Wear this shirt, eat this breakfast, sit in this car seat, stop touching that.
Right. We are systematically starving their need for autonomy, so when they push back, it's because that need is chronically unmet.
So what does this all mean for us, like practically speaking?
It means we have to ask why we want a child to do something. If the only reason they comply is fear of punishment or fear of the parent's anger, we are actively eroding their autonomy and their relatedness to us.
We're just using sheer authority to force compliance.
Exactly. We might win the battle over putting on the shoes, but we are just building a child who has given up on advocating for themselves.
We're prioritizing our short-term convenience over their long-term psychological architecture. Okay, so now that we understand the child's need for autonomy, we have to look at the final gap. And this one forces parents to look in the mirror, and honestly, is the hardest one of all. Gap 3 is not knowing your own needs.
This requires a very high degree of self-awareness.
It does. The author shares another story here about 6-year-old Carrie's jumping on a wooden deck. And she was jumping enthusiastically, but she kept getting closer and closer to these garden steps.
Ooh, scary.
Right. The parent's first instinct, her biological urge, was to yell, "Stop jumping, you're going to hurt yourself."
This raises an important question, though. What was the parent's actual need in that moment?
Well, it wasn't to stop the jumping,
Well,
right?
exactly. The core need wasn't no jumping. The core need was safety.
So she caught herself before she yelled, and she shifted tactics. Instead of a hard authoritarian limit, she said, I'm worried you're going to fall down those steps. How can we make sure that doesn't happen?
I love that. She presented the problem and invited the child to collaborate.
And Carrie's came up with a brilliant solution. She found some small pebbles and moved them to the side of the deck to mark her jumps so she knew exactly where her boundary was without landing on the pebbles or going near the edge.
It's a complete win-win. If you break down the result, the child got play, movement, joy, and competence. She managed her own body.
And the parent got safety.
Exactly. And the best part, no limit was needed at all.
None. But the danger of unrecognized needs is so real. Let's say the parent in that scenario was running on 3 hours of sleep.
Oh, completely different story.
Right. What if her actual unacknowledged need was just for quiet?
Then the pebble solution wouldn't have worked at all. The kid would still be thumping around on the wood deck, and the parent would still be losing her mind.
Because the need for quiet is going unmet.
Yes. And if she was just operating on vague irritation or that unrecognized need for quiet, her window of tolerance would have narrowed dramatically.
The window of tolerance being that zone where our brain functions logically, right?
Exactly. When unmet needs pile up, fatigue, hunger, sensory overload, they act as biological stressors. Your window of tolerance shrinks until a totally normal child behavior pushes you outside of it.
You get hijacked by your own biology and you just snap.
You resort to authoritarian control and yell, "Stop jumping because I said so." But knowing your own needs often eliminates the need to set a limit entirely. If she knew she just needed quiet, she could address that directly.
It takes the focus off micromanaging the child and places it squarely on adult self-awareness. It's a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
So to summarize this for everyone listening, instead of just managing behavior, ask yourself, what do I actually need here? By getting clear on your values, respecting their autonomy, and knowing your own needs, you drastically reduce how often you even have to set limits.
You strip away the vast majority of the friction, but I will add one final point from the research, because even with all this, things will occasionally go sideways.
Oh, inevitably. We're only human.
Exactly. The most powerful tool for reducing defiance isn't a consequence or some perfectly executed parenting script.
What is it then?
It's the relationship itself. Repairing connection often dissolves defiance before a limit even needs to be set. When a child feels securely connected, their biological drive to cooperate naturally increases.
Connection acts as the great stabilizer. I love that. It relieves us of the burden of having to be perfect tacticians.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over. If high compliance in early childhood is actually a red flag for future anxiety, like we discussed,
Right.
and saying no is a healthy developmental milestone,
Yeah.
the next time you face defiance, whether from a child refusing to put on their coat or even a colleague pushing back aggressively in a meeting,
Oh, that's a great comparison.
right, could you challenge yourself to view it not as a personal attack on your authority, but as their clumsy, vital attempt at self-advocacy?
It completely changes how you respond in the moment.
It really does. Maybe they aren't trying to break you. Maybe they're just trying to build themselves.